Hi, I'm Tony Russo, and this is Funeral Service Insider, the podcast from Kates-Boylston. Conversations worth having about the culture and business surrounding death care and end-of-life care. This week we are speaking with Micah Truman of Return Home about that company's recent announcement that they'll be expanding into Georgia and Minnesota. There is so much cool stuff going on there, not just in the way that they're helping to change death care, but in the way that they're also helping to reaffirm death care. One of the really interesting parts of the conversation is when Micah starts to talk about how well they're doing with their own preneed, plus how effective being able to sell Terramation preneed insurance has been for other funeral companies and other funeral directors. So anyway, great conversation. Please hang around to the end and I will give you my phone number and email address, and I would love to hear back from you, especially on this topic. This is going to be a great topic. As a matter of fact, we are going to get into it right after this message from our sponsor, Homesteaders Life Company.
In a business built on trust, consistent financial strength speaks volumes. That's why I'm proud to share that AM Best has once again affirmed Homesteaders' financial strength with an A- excellent rating. Last year was a transformative one for our company, and AM Best affirmation tells us we're on the right track. As a mutual company owned by our policy owners, we remain laser focused on delivering dependable value, industry-leading support, and future-ready solutions to funeral professionals nationwide. Homesteaders is stronger than ever by every measure. Our partners rely on us for the long term, and it is critical that we execute at a high level today while aggressively planning for the future. Reach out to your Homesteaders account executive to hear more about how we are leading the profession in investing in tools and services that benefit funeral providers.
So I'm one of those people that gets jealous pretty easily, and when you were on Shark Tank and I hadn't put it out yet, I was embarrassed. and and since then, you know, I every time I open the internet, you've got something else cooking. So can you tell me what the last kind of 2 years have been like for you, for your company? And then we'll get into Terramation.
The last 2 years, that's a very big question.
I know.
There's so much. Legalization across the country has been pretty stratospheric. We have now 13 states that have legalized. When we first started, which was 4 years ago almost exactly, there was one, Washington, and everyone thought maybe Washington would be the only one. The states that have legalized include New York and California. So we've already got, I think, over 50% of the United States population with states that are legal to go.
Wow.
And we've just got growth and a huge desire from families to use this disposition. It's been absolutely mind-blowing.
One of my editorial sticking points is there was this rush to legalize it, but nobody was kind of coming in to fill, that clear want, or at least, And then a couple of months ago, I saw my first ad for a funeral home where it's legal, but it's not possible. That's what I say, illegal and not possible. And They, on the heels of the passage, I don't recall who it was, they said, yes, we do human composting.
Yep.
And then they send them to you or to whomever. I don't recall who they made the deal with, but a lot of funeral homes make deals. So I guess first let's talk about, how does a deal work? Like if I have a funeral home, I just call you and how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, in normal, in our industry parlance, it's just a ship out. So that would mean that the funeral home that receives the decedent and cares for the family sends that decedent to us in Auburn, Washington. We terramate them. We call it terramation, right? The transformation of human remains into soil. And we send that soil back to the family. So insofar as a funeral home's concerned, it's no different than any other ship out they do.
And nobody begrudges them, or certainly, I guess you wouldn't begrudge me if I said I offer it through your company, or...
Oh, anything but. We've put huge effort into building a national network of funeral homes. We have hundreds. And no, not to the opposite. We are very focused on our partnerships, and they are across the country.
And I do want to ask very particularly about the word terramation. Is that your word? Can I use that to describe the process? Or
Yeah.
I know that there are some processes that have different names. We've got a clinic situation going on.
We do.
So I want to know, can I use Terramation to talk about earth funerals, or is that you?
I mean, it's a trademark term. We love people using it. No one can be stopped from using it like saying it, nor
Right.
can people be stopped from writing and using the word Terramation. Anyone can do that.
Yeah,
What
I
we
like you
don't
though. I don't want to hurt your feelings if that's your word and I should
To the
use.
contrary, I would
Okay.
be deeply gratified were you to use the word terramation in all of your work, and
All right.
we have that word, and there's a reason for it. So we have natural organic reduction that no one can remember, certainly
Right.
not an older person, and certainly not a grieving older person. We have human composting, which is gross, right? We don't say, "I'm so sorry for the loss of your grandmother. Would you like to incinerate her?" Or
Right.
have formaldehyde placed inside her and interred underground, right? We have words for these things and we have chosen our words. So the words that exist are, I think, suboptimal, and the one we have, we think, is excellent.
Well, I'm happy to use it. That's you just I'll just make the editorial decision now. Funeral Service Insider will just use Terramation as long as you're not going to get mad.
To the contrary. Thank you very much. I will send you a fruit basket.
Well, there's no need to send me a fruit basket, but I have to say again, I was a little jealous when you were talking about the Atlanta Constitution Journal Constitution, saying Terramation instead of NOR.
Oh yeah,
And
it's coming up so quickly. We think this. I mean, if you search Terramation, it's really gone. I think this is going to be the word that is used.
that's fantastic. And
Thank you.
let's jump into that for a second, because this
Sure.
is a huge swing, I think. And I'm sorry, I probably said something in the introduction, but in case I don't, you guys just committed to moving to Georgia, to doing a thing in Georgia.
We are excited. We are thinking of both Georgia and Minnesota. Minnesota
Wow.
in the shorter term, Georgia in the longer term, right? Because Georgia still, it's getting it through, but we don't
Yeah.
quite know the regs. Oh man, Georgia. And think about that, Tony. I mean, Georgia, when we first started, we thought, okay, Washington, right? A blue state, kind of on the fringe, right?
Yeah.
To realize that Georgia went through in a very purple state, that Arizona went through of similar ilk. We don't see any political barriers. It's irrelevant as to whether you are a Republican, Democrat, or just a purple state. It goes through and it gets almost completely bipartisan support.
And I think that one of the things is it's an easy win. And I've said this editorially before. It's an easy win at a time where easy wins don't come along very often.
We can't decide
legislator.
our parties can't decide what kind of sandwich they want to order together. So, in Georgia specifically, 209 votes were cast and only 5 of them were against. So we're looking at something that is genuinely bipartisan across the United States.
Let's talk a little bit about Minnesota, because you're saying that like you already have stuff in writing, like you have plans, like real plans.
We are excited to get Minnesota going. Yeah. So Minnesota legalized almost exactly a year ago. They then spent a year developing their regs, and they've got really, I think, regs that are extremely user-friendly. We really can work with them. They were smart. They took the best of what had already been done and they augmented it somewhat, but these are absolutely implementable. And we're excited to go. We understand the landscape. We understand that the state is very similar demographically to our state of Washington. And we are excited to get rolling on that.
I've written about Minnesota a lot. When you say they took the best of what's around, though, I want to ask, if I wanted to start passing a law, what are some of the things that you wish had been considered differently, I think, in some states?
I think the one thing that we might have thought a little bit about is making sure universal testing protocol that we all agree on that indicates when the soil is ready to return to the family. We know that we are speed obsessed in this country. We know that for good or bad, there's going to be a race to be fast. And fast is fine as long as the job is done properly and the soil's ready to go home. And I think that protocols to really standardize that would be a big one. And then the other ones that I think are really important, this is where New York fell short, very short, is the ability to take soil home. And in New York's case, again, there was a problem in which they said only cemeteries can do this disposition. And by definition in New York, a cemetery is a nonprofit. And again, that's a non-starter and pretty much freezes the industry in their state. So there are a number of things that I think we should make universal, but Minnesota cribbed Washington's language. And it's incredible that Washington was the first state to legalize and did such a darn good job of it. And that's exciting. I think we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Let's stick with what we know, augment it, but keep the basics.
And actually, I did a story, I think last year or the year before, about a representative in Oregon who was upset that no one had moved in yet. But I guess Oregon's is probably too close. If you're looking, there are only a couple of you guys who are doing this. And if you're looking at making it easier to, I guess, have shorter shipping places, then Oregon doesn't make a lot of sense for a Washington company.
That is correct. And actually, there is a small facility in Oregon, not ours,
good.
but it's already been opened. And that representative who you mentioned, we actually ended up caring for her husband, who unfortunately passed.
Right.
So,
I didn't know it was you, so that's great.
Yeah, no, when he passed, he requested that he come to us. And so, there's been a lot of that. But no, Oregon's not, simply because, geographically it's close enough that I don't think that's necessary. But obviously, as we get farther afield, it becomes more interesting. Minnesota, perfectly placed in the Midwest, right there on a major flight route, right? Delta's hub is right there. And by some amazing coincidence, Atlanta, Georgia, another major flight hub. And so really, these dominoes have fallen really remarkably. Totally excited about both of those places.
Oh, and also because I don't want to be too mercenary about it, but it's got to be a lot less expensive for the families as well when you're near a hub of that size, as opposed to trying to get somebody out of like Montana.
Totally. And let's not be mercenary. Let's be really direct about this. It's not just a matter of money, and money matters. If you lose your person, the person that's most important to you, you would prefer not to put them on an airplane. That's why funeral homes exist locally, right? People
Right.
don't drive 400 miles to the funeral home. They go to the one that they trust right in their area. So the more local we are, the better it is. We want it. Facilities, at least in our case, cost millions of dollars. And, it's a major, undertaking, if you'll pardon the pun. And I think that's exactly the focus. We take it very seriously. We build large, very technologically complex facilities that are open to the public, and we have to really prepare for that.
And that is going to be my next question. One of the things that I write about pretty much every 2 or 3 weeks is people having heart attacks when somebody wants to put a crematory near their house or in their state. Do you worry about that? Do you worry about the NIMBY factor? I
think there is a NIMBY factor, but I think it's very, very different. What we find is there is such passion behind what we do. And I mean, for starters, we have 1 million people or close to it following us on social media.
Wow.
There is a groundswell of support, right? I mean, very simply put, no one ever says, I'm terminal. It's the hardest time of my life, but the thing that's giving me hope is that I will be cremated. Said nobody. But in our case, that's exactly what people say. And this is, I think, something that people want to do. We want to go back to the earth. And I don't care if we're, who we are, what religion we are.
And could you tell me about some of your relationships with funeral homes, maybe where I'm sure you must have a funeral home that sends you more than everyone else, or?
We do have some funeral homes that send us more than others. Absolutely.
And do you think that has to do with their pitch or their demographic?
A combination. For one, it takes a long time. Think about it from are you a funeral director originally?
No.
Okay. So, neither am I. So here I am. Think of it from a funeral director's point of view, right? They don't know the disposition very well. It's all very new. The facility is not in their geography. They have to do a ship out. And often, of course, a funeral director, if everything goes right, they don't have any feedback. And if things go wrong, the sky falls.
Right.
And therefore, if I were a funeral director, I don't blame them. They have to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And when you hear about this, that's a very concerning disposition. And so getting our funeral directors very simply to sit with the family and say, hello, Ms. Smith, at the arrangement room, I'm so sorry for your loss. Are you interested today in burial, cremation, or terramation? If that was done, the whole world would change. But they don't. And I don't, in many ways, blame them, right? There's a long way to go before that kind of confidence is there. And for obvious reasons. And that's the big barrier we have to cross.
Yeah, I actually just wrote a story about Oklahoma. They were changing some laws. They decided to do away with the funeral board. But one of the things that the funeral board had been lobbying for is if you have a funeral home and you don't have a crematory on site, you have to advertise this. And people lost their minds over that. Like, that's not what you don't want to say. Hi, I'm not going to take care of your person really.
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah. Sorry. We're just a storefront. We actually use third-party providers. You should know that.
Yes. Yeah. Then, that didn't go over real well.
No, I think that was a Led Zeppelin, huh? Yeah. So wait, did that law ultimately pass? And that's what
No.
They didn't do it.
Yeah, they didn't do it as far as I can tell. Like I said, they disbanded the funeral board, so there was no one to ask.
Oh, wow. So who regulates them?
Nobody yet. It's they have until July 1st, so
it'll work out.
They're all scrambling. Yeah, it was one of those. It's government's not here to govern. I don't know what government's here for. So that's what happened in Oklahoma.
And that's a larger discussion. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to spin out of control here.
Yeah, exactly. I hear you.
Hi. I want to take a second to talk to you about the Kates-Boylston events. We have virtual events, we have live and in-person events, and we also have webinars. They're all really valuable experiences. I happen to have a webinar coming up on June 25th, if you're listening to this before June 25th, and it's called How to DIY Your Marketing. It's with Michael Anderson and Jensen Lindsay from @Need Marketing, and I'm really looking forward to that. Actually, I think that we're going to have Jensen on an upcoming installment of Brief Introduction, and looking forward to that one. But also, if you look at the events this fall, we have a bunch of virtual and in-person events. In November, we're slated to be in Detroit for the Advances in Funeral Innovations Conference. That's set for November 12th. There's a link to more info in the show notes. In September, we have our Marketing Summit, and in October, we have our Funeral Technology Summit. Visit events.katesboylston.com for more information. Now, let's get back to Micah. So let's go backwards a little bit and talk about your background and what made this an appealing, because it's not just, I don't mean that it's not just becoming a funeral director, but this is a livelihood. This is a big bet. It's a huge bet.
It is a big bet
with your life. Well, with your livelihood.
Is.
And so, can you tell me what made you make it, and how do you feel about your decision?
I'm glad you asked me now and not a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, originally I worked in finance, and I worked between China and the United States. We were getting investment capital into large real estate projects, and New York City, Florida, Aspen, Colorado. We did a bunch of different things. I was very lucky. It was a great business, and I found myself in my late 40s trying to figure out, once I exited that business, what I wanted to do next. And the possibility was maybe I don't. I just stop. But I'm not that old, and I don't think anyone has time to sit with me and have coffee. And so the idea became, how do I build, the skill that I have is I'm able to build and scale companies. Mm-hmm. And I think at a certain point, again, it doesn't matter if we're Republican or Democrat or what our ultimate ideology is. If we're going to use all the resource on the planet, there's not going to be much left. If we cut down all the trees, it's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of challenge. And so one of the things I was really thinking about is, how do we, honest to goodness, build a company that the bigger it gets, the better off the world is for it? No BS, right? How do we do that? And we saw two flavors. One was really wonderful companies doing fair trade wool in small developing nations and little towns, hand knitting socks. And that's a beautiful business. I'm sorry, it's a beautiful product and a terrible business. And then, of course, we have companies that are our company is just absolutely changing the environment. Now look at this lovely engineer in our advertisement. She's just the happiest, right? And
right.
It's a gasoline company. And again, I'm not trying to say we shouldn't use gasoline, but that's garbage. And so either way, right, we're not quite delivering it straight. We're greenwashing it. And for me, I really wanted to find a company that could do both. And in 2018, I was sitting with my mom and two of her buddies from New York, and the newspaper reported that this was about to be legal in Washington. And I was like, Ma, this is bananas. Look at this. Because I didn't have background in the funeral industry. And my mother, who was in her late 70s at the time, said, that's not bananas in the slightest. I would do that. And her two buddies, of course, of similar age, said, I would too. Can you get our bodies from New York? And I don't know about you, but, we didn't really have those types of conversation in my home. And it just stuck in my head. And I don't mean to be arrogant. I think our listeners, this will stick in their head too. It's going to live rent free, and they might like it or hate it. But this is something that really sticks with us and we think about it. We talk about it. We discuss it with our families. And I was no different. In early 2019, in January, I began the research, just kind of dipping a toe in. And then I dipped a foot in and a leg. And before I knew it, I was neck deep. Ended up raising a bunch of capital, but spent a bunch of my own. And in 2021, June, we launched our facility, 16,000 feet in Auburn, Washington, 72 vessel capacity. We can transform 72 people, give or take, per month, and off to the races. And we're almost 4 years in, and it's been the ride of a lifetime. You'd asked how I felt.
Yeah.
2 years ago, I was not feeling too excited. I'm not going to lie to you. The world takes a long time to warm up to this, both the funeral homes and the families, right? It's not like we're not a Snickers bar on the way out of Safeway. We don't go, oh, I saw a great article today and I've lost my grandmother. How about it? We think about it. We've thought about it for a long time. It tends to be consensus driven. You know, my sister has to agree as well. And that, of course, was not an easy task. But here we are, obviously, all these years later. I think we're at close to 600 families and we've served 30 states. And so now at this point, we're like, holy smokes, this is for absolute real.
I want to take that apart a little bit. I want to talk about, it feels like this is a families first and then a funeral industry kind of second. Was that your experience?
Yes. Our direct business, families coming directly to us, was by far the majority of our business in the first couple years. But the funeral homes have come roaring in. And funeral homes are, 50% and more of our revenue now. And I expect that number to increase significantly as a percentage.
Well, and that is, I want to talk about, and I didn't get to interview Kates-Boylston because she's just too busy running all over the whole world saving it. But she won the Inspiration Award. And I would like to talk about that in context of like industry legitimacy. And I think this is huge. And do you agree?
I do. Katie won the Inspiration Award, and that's a huge honor. And I think one of the biggest awards in our industry. You know, like when a school comes to us on a tour, I would say, when 20 kids, students, I should say, came and visited Return Home a little while ago, 19 of them were female. And Katie won the award for the inspirational female funeral director in the United States. And obviously, given our numbers right now, that's an incredible honor. I think well over 100 people, were nominated. So that's a testament to Katie, but it's also a testament to the fact that our industry is getting attention. But the funeral industry, and I should say the NFDA, has given us a very fair shake. 2022, we were best of the best. 2024, we did it again. Washington State Funeral Home of the Year in 2022. So we've really seen that I think the funeral industry is supportive and backs us. Of course, they were nervous in the beginning. Why wouldn't they be?
Well, yeah.
But I think they've come really, really turned around, and we are deeply appreciative. Man, these guys have really, really laid it down for us. We're really excited about it.
I mean, I know we've talked about the future with Georgia and Minnesota. Do you see yourself in 20 states? Do you see yourself in 50 states? I mean, 50 seems like a lot, or does it not seem like a lot?
It does not seem like a lot. It does not seem like a lot. No. I mean, it will be legally, obviously, going to be necessary that it be ratified, but we want to be in the states that ratify. At the end of the day, the funeral business is a highly local business. We must be there, and we intend to be. We'll get there.
Do you have like a tipping point number? Is it? I mean, obviously, you've got to. You're a finance guy. You can't just keep building. You've got to build and pay and build and pay and build and pay. Let me ask it this way. So Minnesota, do you have a ballpark about how many pieces you're going to, how many, do you call them vessels?
Vessels.
Right. How many vessels you're going to have in Minnesota?
Yep. We're going to, at this point, we could vary slightly, and that's because we don't know our ultimate location and all these sorts of things, but we really like our sizing. So we currently have 74 vessels here in Washington. I think we'd like to replicate that in Minnesota and in Georgia. It might change, but I think that's really pretty standard. And the part that's really exciting for us is we have, I think, a really community-focused way of bringing investment, into a state. Instead of going to standard venture capital, which I would just say is, I mean, I have a lot of experience in it and it's very problematic, right?
Yes.
This is go big or go home, break things, grow big. But we can't do that in this industry. We can't go, oh, we tried hard. Oops, we're shutting it down. Families that are currently being cared for.
Right.
Yikes. Oh, I don't know what to tell you. We're not a dog walking app. And I think that it's very important that our communities support us. So for us, as we're going into these markets, we're going to be taking investment from the communities that we are entering to build these facilities. And that gives us, I think, an incredible leg up as we begin our expansion across the states.
Because they want you there. And the last thing they want is an empty human composting.
Oh, yeah. When somebody
facility.
invests, they are thinking about the people they love most. Absolutely. If I'm investing and I'm in Minnesota, I'm thinking about my mother. And that is a serious thing. I'm not playing.
You're not thinking about your 14% return.
Well, I actually, there's nothing wrong with doing well and good. Those aren't mutually exclusive. And we look for, again, it's the same thing as I said before, right? With being a good company and an environmental company. We can be both. And I'm excited about the fact that we can genuinely give that possibility. We can do the right thing and we can do the profitable thing. So let's do it.
Do you think Terramation is done being innovated? You mentioned before the time and this kind of, not fear, aversion, I guess, to trying to get everything done fast, because this isn't the kind of thing that maybe should be fast. But do you guys think that you're topped out? Do you think, or are you working on new things, I guess is my...
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I mean, we are always innovating. And I think any technical company is always innovating. So that's an absolute. Of course we are. But at the same time, I think the thing we have to be very cognizant and careful of is, as we're innovating, make sure that we're transparent and doing the right thing. I could do this process a great deal faster, but I don't think the families would want me to do that, because the things we need to do to make it 3 weeks instead of 2 months would be to do things that I think they wouldn't want to have done to their loved one. And one of the challenges in our industry is its non-transparency. If you don't show the family and don't tell the family exactly how it's going to go, well, see no evil, hear no evil, here we go. But we are subject to scrutiny that's very different from the traditional dispositions. And we have to be able to explain it, and we have to walk a person through our facility. And if we're going to do that, there are certain limits to what I believe, morally should be doing. And I think that's the line that we come up against as we look at time. But I'll add another thing. When I first started and my scientists told me it would take 2 months, I was like, we're screwed. We're totally cooked. You better go faster or we are dead ducks. And God love him, my chief scientist said that might be possible, but I won't be the guy to do that. So go find somebody else. And I was like, John, don't be that guy. All right, let's do it, because he's lovely and brilliant. And we stuck with it. It turns out the families, we have never one time, not once, had a family go, I'm just so upset about timing. What usually happens is they go, oh gosh, already? And that's because I think, they're grieving. They know that they've got some time. They spend their time doing it. And maybe we can count to 3, like 3 days, but we can't count to 60. And I think that that's just fine. It lets us kind of get through our grief, not completely by any means, but it lets us begin that journey. And I think that's just fine.
And it's certainly not, with the number of, we talk often about the number of the number of boxes that are in closets filled with people who, because you get them right back and then it's like, okay, well, I don't know what to do with it. I'll set this aside till I'm ready. I guess that it makes perfect sense that people don't mind waiting a little bit and
absolutely not
thinking about what's going to happen.
No, they don't. And the soil is theirs. And, as you say, they can keep it for as long as they want. So 2 months for most people, in our case, has not in any way been a problem.
And do you do a lot of tours? Do people fly out to check you out and then make the decision? Is that something that happens with any kind of regulation?
We were joking about this a couple days ago, Tony, and it wasn't actually a joke. We have done well north of 1,000 tours.
Wow.
And the whole point is we've got to show people what we do, because at first blush, we say human composting, we call it the cuckoo bird moment, You go, what? And people have images of things that are kind of rough. Well, the way to solve that is to come see us. And that's what we've done. And we've toured oh my gosh, literally thousands of people. And we continue to daily. And it's so important.
Excellent. And we are running up against it, and I don't really have much else for you. So do you have anything for me? Is there something I should have asked and didn't ask, or something you thought you'd get the opportunity to say, but I didn't provide it?
A couple things. I think the first
Please.
Sure. One of the most incredible things we've seen is that when in the beginning we were doing tours and funeral directors were coming in, we thought, oh, this is a one-off. They just want to see it and that's great and we hope to do business. The funeral directors preneed with us like mad.
Wow.
And the reason is they know this business. And when they see what we do, they know that it's for them. And not just for them, when they lose their people, they bring their people to us. So I think that's been an incredible thing.
Let me ask you about that a little bit. And is it because that is, I don't want to say an easier sell, but I guess as long as people are using their imaginations, they use them all the way? Does that sound right?
Well, do you mean that when someone conceives of or hasn't seen Terramation, it scares them because it just sounds a little rough? Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm saying the type of person who decides to do a pre-need plan, you're like, oh, well, the world is your oyster. What do you want?
Yes.
And now all of a sudden Terramation is on the table in the way that it might not be at need.
Absolutely. And, when you have a funeral industry person, they've probably worked in a retort. They've cremated somebody. And that is a hard job. Ask anyone who's worked that job, right? Burial and embalming. Again, that's a hard job. There are rough parts to it. Our business and what we do when they see it is not. It is just such a beautiful, gentle way to go back. And we will take them through every single step in the process and they will see it. And they go, oh man, I will do this. I will do this for my people. So I think that's been a really big one. The other really big thing, Tony, is preneed. It is off the hook. We, yesterday, one of my preneed guys called me. They had 3 meetings in 3 different states. The oldest was 38 and the youngest was 22. And so what we're also looking at is a completely different approach to preneed, where A, geographically dispersed across the country because there's so many people who want it, and B, it is about people, young people also, really planning in a way that is not done with traditional disposition. And that is mind-blowing. These are healthy people that are going to live for another 50 years. And pretty remarkable to see that our young people are doing this. And it's not just like you say, oh, I'm young and, I'm an environmentalist and a tree hugger and I want to do it. Sure. But we have young people who call us and go, I work on a farm, man. I work in a farm, my father's farm, my grandfather's farm. I know what the land is and I want to go back to it. And I'm not taking any chances. I just lost my grandpa. So really, we're not just talking about a disposition here. We're talking about a new paradigm in how people are looking at it, who's buying it, how old they are, and across the entire country. And I'm talking Arkansas, places I was like, and I asked these guys, I was like, how come? And they said, we're farmers, we're hunters. Of course I want my farm to stay in my family's hands and do well and have our soil do well, right? Unlike our city dwellers, these guys know soil. They live off the land.
Yeah.
I'm a hunter. I want to make sure that the stand where I've always hunted deer is available and there for my kids. And I would like my soil to go there because that's a sacred place to me. So really the whole idea that we had was completely turned on its head. When we first started, right, we have vessels and the vessels are 8 feet long by 3.5 feet wide by 3.5 feet tall. And in that vessel, we first place organics, alfalfa, straw, and sawdust, then the body, and then another layer of those organics. And what they do is they take the microbes in our body, the things that, sort of transform the food we eat into the energy we use. And the moment we die, we are butterflies, essentially. Instantly, our body flips on a dime, floods our body with the microbes that are in our gut, and those microbes transform us. And the organics we use simply aid that process, right? Make it go much faster. Okay, fine, that's the science. It takes about 2 months and we get it done. But the thing I think that is so incredible about it is what our families have requested, which is, well, hang on, my loved one's in the vessel and you're putting organics in there. Could I put flowers in there? How about the cake from my wedding that's been sitting in there for 25 years in my freezer? I lost my kid. Can I put jelly beans in there? How about love letters? How about cheap scotch, expensive scotch, whatever people want? And suddenly people were filling the vessels with all this incredible material that I think was so close to their hearts. Then they start decorating the outside of the vessels with pictures and letters and flags and Jewish prayer shawls and, and military flags and rainbow flags, all kinds of amazing stuff. And so suddenly we saw this upsurge in what our families were asking for that we never in the beginning believed possible.
Yeah.
And so now we do that, with the kids, right? If they're there, they're going to do, grieve differently. And so, kids got LED lights and they're sticking them on the outside of the vessel and they're writing letters to their grandma and putting them on the outside. And so what we found is this is a stunningly heartfelt way to say goodbye to your person. And that, of course, we didn't know in the beginning, but we know now, and our families take advantage of that. And that's been stunning. So, for example, today we did a service and the family was there and did all the things I just described. And not only that, they were there when we placed organics over their person and they covered their person with their hands. And there is nothing in our society, for the most part, let's call it Judeo-Christian, that has us cover our person with our own hands. And the power of that is unbelievable. And that was this morning. And so we're looking at a way, not just, of course, in terms of technology and environment, but we've got the most heartfelt way to say goodbye to somebody. And we only have one shot. So let's make it count. And I think that's been stunning.
I don't work for you, and this is not a sales pitch, but also no one who did that isn't going to want it done to them, right?
Of course. And also, when someone has that done to the person they love, they go home that night and they're talking to their friends and their family, and they're going, we were able to do this. And we haven't been able to. We don't even know that it's possible. It's not that we like or dislike. It's like saying, let's talk about flying. I mean, maybe you'd like to fly, but you don't have wings, and that's not really in your game, right?
Right.
But if you could, what would you like? Same game here. Okay, now we can do this incredible goodbye. What do you want? What would you hope for? And that begins the dialogue. And our families go home just going, holy freaking cow, this is wild. And that's been not what I expected, right? I didn't know that was going to happen, but it did.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fantastic. I recall at my grandfather's funeral, they said, if you want to touch the body, you can. Yep. But it's something you have to be told you can do.
That's right.
You have to be told it by someone who has the courage and the wherewithal to tell you. And that's not common.
A lot of people, when they first come to us, they're a little scared sometimes, right? They say, well, I was there and I did have my grandfather die and he was in the front of the room, but he didn't really look like my grandfather. He looked different and I was little and I didn't feel good. And I think there's a lot of fear there. And, for us, when you come see your person, we can't use formaldehyde. And yes, the person's died and they look like they've died. They do, but they also look like our person. And there's something about that makes them utterly approachable. It's reptilian. It's in our bones to go do that. We've done it forever. And I think that is the barrier that we've sort of jumped over. And again, I didn't know that at the beginning, but boy, it has really happened.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and hanging out and telling me all your stuff. And and thank you for your due. I'm very excited. I'm excited to get this out.
Thank you so much. We're really excited as well. We're also looking forward to talking to you as begin making our initial entries into Georgia and Minnesota and talking to the communities there. So really excited. Hope to keep you up to date on all of it.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right.
In a business built on trust, consistent financial strength speaks volumes. That's why I'm proud to share that AM Best has once again affirmed Homesteaders' financial strength with an A- excellent rating. Last year was a transformative one for our company, and AM Best affirmation tells us we're on the right track. As a mutual company owned by our policy owners, we remain laser focused on delivering dependable value, industry-leading support, and future-ready solutions to funeral professionals nationwide. Homesteaders is stronger than ever by every measure. Our partners rely on us for the long term, and it is critical that we execute at a high level today while aggressively planning for the future. Reach out to your Homesteaders account executive to hear more about how we are leading the profession in investing in tools and services that benefit funeral providers.
Funeral Service Insider, the podcast, is a Kates-Boylston production. It was written and edited by me, Tony Russo. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for subscribing. If you have not subscribed yet, please, you can subscribe wherever you're listening. Now just go to the subscribe or follow button on your phone and click it, and you will get notified when our show comes out. I want to welcome all of our new listeners. We had a bunch of you sign on the last week, which has been great. And I hope you're really liking the In Case You Missed It show. This is a little bit different, but I think it's certainly worth your while. So let me remind everybody that if you would like to leave me feedback, you can do so by voicemail or email. The email, just click through to the show notes. My phone number is also on the website as well, but it is 732-746-0233, extension 709. If you leave a voicemail, I will play it back on the show unless you don't want me to, in which case I won't play it back on the show. Same with the email as always. And that will do me for this time on Funeral Service Insider, the podcast.